Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of Shelf Review. As you know by the title, we'll be going over C.S. Lewis's The Abolition of Man today. Now, when it comes just to preface, I have read not much of C.S. Lewis, but what I've read, I've really enjoyed because he's a very, really just enjoyable author because all of his stuff, it just enthralls you. And even when it's discussing something like philosophy with The Abolition of Man or theology with The Great Divorce, it always absorbs you. And so, of his that I've read the first book in his space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet. I've read the Chronicles of Narnia, and I've read The Great Divorce. So not much of his actual philosophical or theological writings, but just predominantly his fiction stuff, which I've really enjoyed because, I love fantasy, love sci-fi. So that all helps a lot. But to begin, like I said, I don't know much on philosophy. I'm just trying to really make a foray into it as of late because I started off by reading, I guess, not really philosophy, but kind of pseudo-philosophy stuff like The Five Rings, Your Art of Wars, Henry David Thoreau, and just an array of other things. Now, The Abolition of Man is one that I've read that is focused more specifically on human, philosophy and the just thought behind humans. Now, for this one, I have the Harper One cover. There's 8 million Harper One different covers of C.S. Lewis books for some reason, and they're all exorbitantly priced. But I think this one was $18 US. So it's quite expensive, but it's really good read, and it's only 113 pages, but I would recommend it because it was worth every bit of the $18. So, with The Abolition of Man, you have it divided into 3 sections. Here's the beginning. You have Men Without Chests, The Way, The Abolition of Man, and the appendix. And most of the time when it comes to stories, I don't really read the appendixes, but I read it this time, and I've been reading them recently. I know I recently read the appendix of, what book was it? I can't remember it recently right now, but I'll have to go look away and find it. But I've been reading appendixes recently because they often have really good, just extra information that you don't get in the main story. And it was really helpful for this book specifically for this. So, to begin with Men Without Chests. Men Without Chests follows Lewis's argument over who, he doesn't specify the authors of these textbooks, but he calls the book the Green Book, and he says the authors, fake names, are Gaius and Titus. And it goes over how, in textbooks, there is some language that may be suggestive to children and may be persuading them to believe in a certain way without directly stating it. So specifically in this one, it's discussing how a waterfall is described as being sublime. And the textbook argues that sublime does not describe the waterfall itself, but rather describes the emotion that the waterfall conveys once observed. Now, Lewis argues that that cannot exist in solidarity, because without seeing the sublime nature of the waterfall, you would not feel the emotion of sublime. And he argues that by removing the, observation aspect and the stuff that influences emotion, you are rather, annihilating the creativity in children, especially when you're conveying these thoughts to them in textbooks. And when you're doing such in textbooks, you're removing creativity, imagination. And I really agree with that, because when authors of textbooks use semi-persuasive language for these children, they're implanting thoughts in them that the children don't even know they're having implanted in them. And it may not always be intentional, but I guess it is kind of manipulative in my eyes for you to include stuff like that, even though the children aren't going to really pick up on it, but they will, because children are like sponges. They'll pick up on every single thing they read in a textbook. I've been a student. I am a student, and I've read through textbooks, and I've picked up on stuff, and it's stayed in my brain for years upon years, building my opinions on certain topics, events, and stuff. So, with that, he just predominantly discussed how such persuasive language should not be used in textbooks for children, since it can form them without them knowing that they are being affected by it. Then, in The Way, he just predominantly discusses the way. He calls it the Tao. And, me reading into it, I was like, crap, I'm not going to know anything about this because I haven't read stuff like the Tao Te Ching or the Analects of Confucius. Now, that's the good thing about the appendix that I'll discuss later. But he discusses the way, or his Tao. I'm just going to call it the Tao from now on, since that's what he calls it. Now, with the Tao, he's discussing how such things and such inserts of one's own opinions in textbooks essentially annihilates or undermines the Tao, because it's taking away practical reason and instead putting computer-like thought into these children, when humans aren't computers. Humans aren't meant to be computers. They're meant to be human. And by having imagination, thought, your own, formative experiences, you remain human. But when people slowly attempt to destroy that practical reason which gives us human nature and individuality, that as that happens, we lose our humanity and the Tao is destroyed, and we become more and more men without chest, men without reason, or men and women without reason to think what we think. We just think that because we're told to think that, and it's drilled into us consistently, instead of just forming our own opinions and having actual conviction in what we do. So that was what the Way and Men Without Chest are about. Now, the Abolition of Man specifically goes on more to discuss human reason. And the Abolition of Man is quite aptly named because it discusses the abolition of man, or the destruction of humanity. So, as it discusses, it goes on a thought process of how, as we break away reason, we are fighting against nature. The main goal of humanity, as discussed by Lewis in this book, is to triumph over nature. That's the goal of almost all species on the baseline level, is to triumph over nature. And as we do that, we lose more of what makes us human. However, as we lose to nature, we are also giving nature concessions, because the further we deny nature and just continue to break it down, the more it triumphs over us, because that is our nature to do so. Therefore, nature wins no matter what. So there is no way to win against nature. So there is no inherent point to fight against nature, because it's going to win no matter what. And instead of striving to be better than nature in all ways, we should strive to empower what makes us human, to perfect what makes us human, and to help those around us to do things which are in the baseline of human morality good. So, and there's one specific line at the last page that I really enjoyed, and it has to do with the transparency of us trying to see beyond what is human. Because the main thing he discusses is we're trying to see what's beyond human, but as we continue to see what's beyond human, what's beyond just keeps becoming transparent, because we keep trying to do it. So it's a hopeless endeavor, because we're just keep seeing through what we were originally trying to see to begin with. So it's just really, just kind of useless, futile, and stupid in a way. But, so, the line states that if you see through everything, then everything is transparent. But a wholly transparent world is an invisible world. To see through all things is the same as to not see. So, what he's stating there is that once we see through everything, we see nothing. Because once you see through everything, you're not actually perceiving anything, because there's nothing there to perceive. You've pushed so hard to break through what was already there. Therefore, you're not perceiving anything. You're not gaining anything. You're not learning. You're not developing as a human, nor as a society, nor a community, nor a species. Because this can technically be applicable to all species. And though other species, a dog isn't going to grasp this concept, but it is applicable to them if they were eventually able to grasp the concept. And that is the majority of what the specific abolition of man discusses. Now, like I said, the appendix was a very useful tool, because it describes Lewis's perception of the Tao, or his own, words on the Tao, or what he considers to be the Tao. And it discusses the I think it's 6 things. He says the way, then the abolition of man. Okay, yeah. So it was just multiple things that he broke down to describe the Tao, which he perceived it as. And like I said, that was very helpful. Honestly, I would kind of recommend reading the appendix of this book if you're going to read it, which I would highly recommend. Even though I've given this brief summary, there's a lot more intricacy and detail in this, because I'm not a philosopher. I'm just a dude breaking down what I read with my troglodyte mind. But, so, I would recommend reading that. I recommend reading the appendix first, since it breaks down what the Tao is in Lewis's eyes. And that is very helpful when reading through the book and when he mentions the Tao, since you know specifically what he's talking about. And the Tao is essentially basic human morality, or described as practical reason, but it's still good to read about it, since to know what he is specifically talking about. So I would recommend reading the appendix first. Now, that is the end of the review, and if that's all you wanted, click off. I'm about to go into a tangent about why I'm doing this and my goals. So, The reason I'm doing this is because I want to grow better at public speaking. Because eventually, someday, I want to be a lawyer. And by being a lawyer, you have to be good at public speaking. And I thought, no, what better way than to do this? And I do really just enjoy talking about the things I love. I love books. I love games. I love anime. I love TV. I love everything. It's almost everything entertainment-wise. And so there will be a lot to discuss. I love music. So I'll probably be doing some stuff about CDs that I've listened to, albums. I don't know why I said albums, but I mean albums, CDs, same thing. But albums, games, books, TV shows, animes. I'll probably have a retrospective on Baki here in a couple of days because I'll finishing up Baki 2018 and preparation for Baki though in February whenever it comes out, or supposedly in February. But yeah, I'm doing this because I want to get better at public speaking. Because to begin with, I'm kind of timid and shy when it comes to public speaking. Now, I thought, hey, what better way to speak publicly than to speak to people online? I know it's not the best way, but I know that it can be helpful because the more you get used to perceiving you're speaking to someone, the better you'll get when you actually speak to someone, or not specifically someone, but a crowd of people, because that's what you're kind of perceiving yourself as doing here. So that is my goal with this. And I wouldn't say expect a very high quality, because I'm literally recording this on my phone. And I have no editing experience, nothing of the likes. I don't even have a computer to do it with. So I just thank you for watching if you watched. And yeah, that's just what I'm thinking on, what my goals are while I'm doing this. So there will be more to come. So thank you very much.